Welcome to Five Questions. Today we have Benjamin Neeley with us, and he's going to answer five questions about comedy, laughter, those type of things. But before we do that, Ben, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a preacher by trade, and I am a part-time stand-up comedian. Travel I've traveled from coast to coast to do it, but I preach in a small town in Arkansas, and they are about as wonderful of a congregation as you can imagine in Mineral Springs Church of Christ, and I'm very thankful that they put up with my two sides because they do merge from time to time.
Yeah, yeah. And people can follow you on Twitter, and you've got a Facebook comedy page,
Yeah, I
and
do.
and
Yeah, they
even
can look
a
me up.
album out, don't you? Um,
I do. That was back in 2014. I should put a new one out. If it were my real job, I would. But
yeah,
it's a lot of work to do that sort of stuff.
yeah. Well, thinking about comedy, first question is how can comedy help convey truth?
Well, it's strange because comedy is truth when you couple it with a story.
Yeah.
So it's not just like you can't bullet point comedy, but you can tell a truth. It's like Jerry Seinfeld does the bit about who's shaving on a plane. He sees the razor blade disposal and says who's now that everyone had seen that razor blade disposal,
Yeah,
but he's the one who saw it and said, let's imagine a world where someone needs this.
yeah,
And so he coupled a truth that everyone knows, there are razor blade disposals on planes,
yeah,
with a new story. And frankly, like the whole truth of the gospel can be caught up in not it's not going to make someone laugh out loud, but it is a revealed truth that resolves a tension, to get a little wonky with comedy.
yeah,
Like, so any like, what is this? Let's play it out and find the answer, find the resolution to this story. And that can be surprising and shocking, and like aha moments are often ha-ha moments. Like, there are things that like connect in your brain, and you go, I've never thought of it. That's been right in front of me the whole time. But comedy conveys truth not as like and sometimes it doesn't soften the blow. Like, sometimes I hear preachers talk about that. You just tell a joke and it makes the crowd feel comfortable.
yeah,
Like, the purpose of comedy is often to sharpen the stick. Like, it's often to really drive a point home. And for preachers, comedy shouldn't be used, I don't think, and this is just my opinion, so
yeah,
no one at me, but it shouldn't be used as like an introduction, like, hey, look, it's funny, we're all friends, now let's get to the real stuff.
yeah,
Like, the best comedic moments in your sermon aren't in your introduction. The best comedic moments are in like the points where you like, a lot of times, metaphors, similes, just to kind of catch them off guard and make them realize a truth in a way that they've never seen it before.
yeah, yeah. I think that's such a great point that you shouldn't kind of use comedy. Hey, we're going to tell a joke and then we're going to, talk about the
Right.
Bible. But instead, it should naturally happen in these, moments within a sermon or wherever else. Thinking about truth and comedy. I don't know if have you seen Colin Quinn's any last couple specials on
I
Netflix?
haven't. I
Okay.
haven't. I should look
Um,
those up.
yeah, he's done the last couple ones on history, but he just did one. I think it just released like this week or last week called Red State Blue State. I thought, well, this is going to be interesting,
Yeah.
and so I
Yeah.
popped it on the other night, and it's amazing how he's able to address some certain truths in a lot of tension. I mean, we are just so
Mm-hmm.
divided as a nation,
Yeah.
um, and he's talking about history, the circumstances we were in, and all kinds of truthful stuff. But you're laughing the whole time, too. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
sort of interesting, how you can come away and maybe see things more clearly or from a better perspective but the whole time you had a good time. You were laughing the whole time.
Yeah, right,
Had it.
right. And that there's Patton Oswalt has a special out, and I forget the name of it. His most recent special on Netflix is after his wife died suddenly.
Oh yeah.
And he talks about that openly and honestly, but doesn't, he does it in ways that are truthful and funny. And then there's another special. It's not a really special. It was, but they happened to be recording it. Tig Notaro performed a stand-up set, a 30-minute set at just some comedy club. I think it was at Largo in L.A., where she got on stage maybe 2 days after finding out she had breast cancer, double breast cancer.
Yeah.
And she talks about that for 30 minutes and kills. It's one of the best sets I've ever heard. But it doesn't have to. They don't have to separate from pain. Comedy's not always pain, but sometimes it's just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have it. But it always tells the truth, either about yourself or about the world around you. And typically, if it's the world around you, it's about how yourself interacts with the world around you. Otherwise, it's not very genuine.
Yeah, and I guess one of my favorite shows to watch is Comedians in Cars, getting coffee. And
Yeah.
I find so much value in them talking about this process and everything. But one of the things that's come off, in several episodes is the ability to talk about anything and also the ability to laugh about it too, which a lot of people can't do that,
No.
Yeah.
No. And I can.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's a superpower that needs to be turned off most of the time in like counseling settings and hospital visits and stuff like that. But because you don't want to, but everything has a story. One of the things that, and I talk about this enough that I've noticed people don't do this like I do, but so I'll be driving and I live in Arkansas, and I'll just see somebody out in their front yard just wearing just pants, typically no shirt, no shoes. Just they're taking something.
It's Arkansas,
Yeah, it's Arkansas. Everybody looks like that. The thing I think is I don't know anything about their story.
Yeah.
Like I don't know them at all.
Yeah.
And sometimes like at intersections, I'll get overwhelmed because I'll just be thinking about who are all these people and what are they? Like I don't know anything about them. And the fact that we all live together and go to Target together, and it's just nuts.
Yeah.
And so I have to kind of like I have to switch that off when I'm just in public, and also whenever I'm watching shows with my wife. There's a show on HGTV called Idiots Buy Houses, and there's a bunch of different versions of it, and I just can't. I practice nodding and smiling in those shows.
Yeah. Well, thinking about scripture, are there any funny moments in the Bible, and can you give us some examples of what they might be?
Oh man, it's almost all funny moments.
Okay.
We've taken scripture so seriously. Now, what I mean by that is you should take scripture seriously, but we've taken our reading of scripture so seriously that we've forgotten the absurdity of it. There is it is useful, I think, for preachers to sit in the text and look for the absurd.
Yeah.
To look around and go. I have a bit. It's actually on the 2014 album. Where I talk about Peter cut off a guy's ear, and then I asked the question, did he think that would help? Where it's like, we just say that. We just say, and then Peter cut off Malchus's ear. But like, if you actually act it out and try to get in there and like, got his ear, Jesus, like that's, there's some Like that's so weird. And
Yeah.
so, but we just hit that and move right
Yeah.
along. But there, I mean, every single miracle has a capacity to just blow us away and to create a scene that we're not prepared for. And but what's crazy is we'll then say, well, the disciples didn't understand. I'm like, what do you? Who would have understood? Like he made bread more bread.
Yeah.
Like what do you? Of course they didn't understand. The problem is you pretend like you understand.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so you don't get it fully. You don't get the magnitude and the power of the miracles, and you don't enjoy them. You can't, you know, Peter, doubting Thomas. Oh, okay, doubting Thomas. We write whole songs about the fact that he wouldn't believe that someone got out of the grave until he saw them.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Like, no one else did either.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was the one. He was just the one buying groceries at the moment when Jesus showed up.
Yeah.
And now he's labeled forever as like the guy who. Yeah, but that's just normal human reaction
Yeah.
to a dude being dead for a while and then not being dead anymore.
Yeah.
But if we just sit in the text for long enough. I think what's it, Lectio. I'm not very good at Latin. Lectio Divina.
Yeah.
Say that for me.
Yeah.
But I like Lectio Absurdum. Just sit in the text for a second and just go, what's weird about this?
Yeah.
And you can tell those stories and bring them to light and make them true and have people enjoy them, maybe even laugh at them. But that's not the goal. The goal is to see them, like you said, to convey truth.
Yeah.
To see them truthfully, and if that causes a laugh, yes, but that's not the goal. And sometimes it is painful to watch preachers bomb, because they want. What happens when preachers bomb is they want a laugh, and they don't get it.
Yeah.
But if you want truth, and typically a laugh will come with that.
Yeah.
I have an impression of preachers telling jokes. I don't have one of it. I don't have a joke to go with it, but I just have at the end. Just imagine I've told a joke, and this is what preachers do.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like, well, does anyone like me?
Yeah.
No, that's not what you're up there for.
Yeah.
You're up there to convey truth, and that may be enjoyable at times, and it may be really difficult at times.
Yeah.
But sitting in and finding the humor or the good news or the comedy in Scripture, that has some blessing to it.
Oh yeah, and I think you're right to emphasize how we read Scripture. You know,
Yeah.
these moments. I'll read a text, and as I've studied it throughout the week, I've seen the absurdity, I've seen the comedy in it. I'll read it.
Yeah.
There will be no laughter, and then I'll say, hey, this is funny, this is absurd, kind of point it out. And then you get a few people who laugh, and then a few people are kind of like, am I supposed to be laughing or not?
Right.
But again,
Right.
it's always pointing to a truth. I mean, the Bible even has a potty joke. I mean, you think about Mount Carmel, and
Yeah.
Elijah.
Yeah.
Where's Bill at? Is he on the throne?
Right.
There.
Yeah.
So,
Right. It's so it's so silly, because human beings are silly.
yeah.
God. I think Jesus would think a lot of our churches are pretty like reserved, because God has this capacity for a lot of beauty and a lot of story and just some fascinating things. I mean, God's made just fascinating human beings, and I mean, when we read the Bible as a text that, well, let's get me some answers here. How can I convert this into a bullet list, or to a point even?
Yeah.
We rush to the main. Like if you're a good preacher, you have a point to your sermon. You know,
Yeah.
you have a thing you're wanting to get across. But we rush to that, and we're not so just kind of overwhelmed by this is crazy. It really is. It's some of it's just the fact that we think it's normal makes us the crazy ones.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you've done stand up for a long time now. Is there anything that you've learned from doing stand up that's helped you become a better preacher?
Yes. Well, and I think I don't want to say this for everybody because
Yeah.
it's just for me. It's because some people need to, some people. I know you manuscript,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You manuscript your sermons. I don't,
Yeah.
but that doesn't make like I've heard people like declare one the victor,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's healthy for any of us really.
No. Yeah.
Uh, the no comedian. Um, no comedian manuscripts the whole thing.
Yeah.
Even John, Jim Gaffigan does to a certain extent. John Mulaney does, but not that much. Not as much as you'd think.
Yeah.
But they've thought about it
Mm.
for a year.
Yeah.
Whereas preachers typically think about it for a week. And so we do kind of have to take that. So one of the things that comedy has helped me do is long thought processes for sermons and for so preparing a year out, preparing a couple of years out, knowing I've got this sermon series coming up. I'm going to let that sit in me for a while, and also it guards against the. It's probably some emotional immaturity in me, but it's something I have to fight. It guards against hearing something new and wanting to teach it immediately, like hearing a new thought or a new understanding and wanting to, oh wow, and imagining myself. Whoa, that happened. My stand died.
Yeah.
That's funny. All right, we'll edit this or not. Or we shouldn't. Now I took a photo.
Okay.
Now I look like everybody else.
Yeah.
But we so anyway, there's a you should keep that in, by the way.
Okay.
Don't make me look better than I am.
Yeah.
The the whole process of like thinking through something slowly makes it quite natural to you.
Yeah.
And so you have this slow thought process. Now, as far as like delivery and stuff goes, I do think about it. I do think about my sermon as in bits. I've got this bit, and the thing I have to accomplish in this particular bit to move me to the next one has to be done. But I can take my time.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to move to the next, and definitely take scripture seriously, but that doesn't always mean boringly.
Yeah.
And those sorts of thoughts. So the way I structure it in my head and on my notes, I use a program called MindNode. I don't know if you've ever looked into that, but
No.
it's brain mapping stuff.
Okay.
And it helps me kind of keep my bits separate, my routines, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And that sort of style helps me.
Yeah.
And that's, that I don't do stand-up comedy. Actually, what's funny is when I do stand-up comedy, I have to have a set list, or I'll get lost and meander a little bit too much. But I don't take any notes into the pulpit.
Yeah.
Because the sermon is going to be more connected than like how do I get from talking about Peter's ear to talking about McDonald's drive-through. Those are so disconnected. Like you just stop talking about one and start talking about the other when you're doing stand-up. But for the sermon, it's got to flow a little bit more. And so I've got to think about, does this, and if I forget a part of my sermon, no sweat.
Yeah.
Like it didn't fit. It didn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we're all different. I love your point about, you don't use any notes. I use manuscript.
Yeah.
The thing is not saying one is right and the other's wrong. I do think that everyone needs to try different methods at some point, because you
Right.
learn
Yes.
something from it. You've
Right.
probably
Yeah.
done a manuscript sermon before, and you
Mm-hmm.
learned something from it. You also learned this isn't for me, and I've
Yes.
done sermons, where I didn't use a manuscript, just use a few notes or whatever, and I learned something from it. I also learned, I need to do this other thing,
Right.
type of deal.
I've manuscripted before, and that's the sermons my wife has not liked.
Yeah.
But what I did learn from it was that, and it's the same thing with writing jokes. Like, there's a lot of lead up to a joke that you can meander through.
Yeah.
But you cannot meander the punchline.
Yeah.
Those words have to be chosen precisely. So there, even if you're not manuscripting, there, and you're not taking any notes with you into the pulpit, on your computer or in your notebook, there has to be lines of importance that the word with which the words have been toiled. Like you have to have some blood and some sweat on the page, even if you're not taking notes into the pulpit. Some people say, "Well, I don't preach without notes. I have notes. They're just not with me." And they're not all written out, but there are the important lines. Those have taken some work. Even in stand-up, I mean, you sit down with a line like, this line's going to be where I end, where I stick my landing.
Yeah.
What does it? How can I rewrite this 12 times?
Yeah.
And that, so even, but I don't. I've had preachers be like, "I preach without notes." I was like, "Nah, you just preach unprepared."
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah.
Like, you're just winging it.
Yeah.
And that's not without notes. You're preaching without thought.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just don't you have your notes, but the pulpit is not a place to work out your ideas. This is not open mic night.
Yeah.
You are the featured presentation.
Yeah.
Have your stuff together.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's a question I think a lot of churches should be asking themselves. I'm not sure they have, but how might laughter, the gift of laughter, I think it should be called a gift, bless a church?
Yeah. There is there's a tendency for churches, like you said earlier. You'll point out something that's funny, and there are people look around like, can we laugh at this?
Yeah.
Like, should we?
Yeah.
And I get that too. I mean, I'll go to other churches and speak, and at first there's a sense of, is this okay?
Yeah.
And the problem, and that, I'm professionally funny. Like, I'm not just throwing out little dorky jokes. Like, I've got legit, and there's times even I've said, "Guys, this is funny," and if you're not laughing, that's a you problem.
Yeah.
That's just that. I know this, you don't. I'm right, you're wrong. But there's a the problem with churches is not like, it's not. They can't. The fact that they can't laugh is not a problem. It's a symptom of a bigger problem, which is they aren't playful.
Okay.
They have taken all of the playfulness out of their system.
Yeah.
And in doing so, most churches remind me of the third man in the story of the talents.
Yeah.
Where he says, I knew you're scary, so I was afraid.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do anything, and my fear of God kept me from being good for God. And producing, and so the system of a church has to inherently be more playful, where it's okay if the kid who has to who runs up and does something, if something happens out of place, that's fine. But you can tell a church sometimes how if they're too serious when something goes wrong, how like you can hear the butt muscles of the congregation tightening. You know, like just
Yeah.
like this. Oh no, what's happened? Ah, what if Jesus was here?
Yeah.
He's fine.
Yeah.
He'd be okay.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? What would happen? This is it is. So we have a second offering.
Yeah.
At our church on the third Sunday. I call it our Baptist offering, and we
We
it's
have
just
one on the
missions,
first.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You have to explain it to people when they
Yeah.
show up. Like this is not something we do every time.
Every Sunday,
But,
yeah, every first Sunday we have to go through the explanation, yeah.
yes, we're not like
And-
someone else made
yeah.
us do it.
And then we always we always say, we're explaining it to our guests, then we're always, but this is not for you, this is
this isn't for you.
yeah.
Just imagine this didn't happen.
Yeah.
When that happens, sometimes the guys who take the money from the first offering and they come into my office and they count it, and then they go put the plates back underneath the table.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's right in the middle of my sermon. Guy just walks in like right in front of me, and so I've got to decide whether the thing most churches do is they just pretend stuff's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they pretend like that 3-year-old that just got loose and is running around the auditorium. But let's just ignore that completely, and the mother chasing the 3-year-old.
Yes, we have a shrieking child.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh yes, the Bible, we know. Like that's all we can do. We're just pretending.
Yeah.
But a sense of we're aware of everything that's around us. And one of the things we do at our church is we just try to make sure that we acknowledge things when they happen.
Yeah.
Actually, a couple of months ago, I was speaking and merged two words. Like I tried to say one word, tried to say another, and I merged them, and it combined to make a smaller, not like a Mach 6 swear word, but a smaller swear word. And it just sort of came out of my mouth really fast.
Yeah.
No one heard it, but I thought everyone heard it. So I stopped and pointed it out and said, hey, this is crazy. And then how that happens sometimes. And then we moved on. Like, well, no one is going to burst into flames. We're afraid of, I always say we're afraid of spontaneous condemnation.
Mm-hmm.
Just burst into hellfire flames because someone forgot to go down a particular aisle during the communion.
Yeah.
If churches could be more playful, and I think that's the goal, is they're showing the world like we take God very seriously. We do not take ourselves very seriously.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think, I may be wrong about this, but I think those level out. So if you're taking yourself very seriously, it's hard to convey that you take God very seriously. Because all people see is the seriousness of self.
Yeah.
But if you can, like my kids know me as a crazy person. They know me like I'm going to dance with them. I'm going to run into doors. I just do everything crazy. But when it's time to talk about serious things like how to love your sibling, they know. Like there's a definite change of tone. It's not anger or not, but it's seriousness.
Yeah.
And so the playfulness of the arena can oftentimes give more gravity to the seriousness of the one we're worshiping.
Yeah.
And I think if you're taking yourself too seriously, it's going to be hard to say, well, like I don't know, just small things like, well, we can't laugh at a naked 3-year-old, which should be the title of my next album. But we can't laugh at a naked 3-year-old. Also, God is very serious. Like those things are so different, but we have one attitude across the whole plane.
Yeah.
And I think it does a disserviceness to the bigness of God to take ourselves that seriously.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the next question kind of leads into what we've been talking about. But why in general do people need a laugh?
Yeah, they they need. Well, you see it in funerals. Um, it's how we process all just about all truths that are coming at us at a quick pace,
Yeah.
and and that I would say that happens more now, but I'm not a very good comparative expert because I wasn't living back in the 1020s.
Yeah.
I'm sure there were way more lions or whatever. I don't know, but um, the so there's like all I know is truth comes at people. Things people have to grieve. Um, things people have to process. Uh, it comes at us very quickly, and it's not that we're not taking those things seriously. It's that the way I deal with um, those sorts of anxieties is I let them be comedic. I let them. I can laugh at this is so serious. I'm gonna have to knock it down a peg. I don't know if you go to you've done hundreds of funerals like I have, and there's um, at the meal they always serve you you have a relative die, you're going to get a potluck.
Yeah.
That's just sort of a rule.
Yeah.
And at those potlucks, it is not just filled with. It's not weeping and gnashing of teeth.
No.
It's typically filled with laughter.
Yeah.
And it's part of the body's response to. It's just how we can deal with things that are serious. And also it's we need to laugh on that front, on the serious parts, but we also need to laugh because we are not serious people, and you trip over something and fall all the way to the ground, which doesn't happen a lot anymore, but if that happens, you can either say I'm so clumsy and beat yourself up, or you can just laugh at it like a clown car going by. It's just a thing that happened, and now you're fine, and move on.
Yeah.
Laughter seems to get rid of tension instead of harboring it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are harboring tension because they've taken themselves and maybe even their faults way too seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just kind of a final wrap up question, talking about the need to laugh and people taking themselves too seriously. But, who are maybe some favorite comedians of yours that make you laugh?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Colin Quinn because that gives me the green light to mention my actual ones.
Okay.
Because they're not going to be the cleanest.
Yeah.
Now, I don't like people who swear for swearing's sake.
Yeah.
That's not. And then, of course, Brian Regan's, to me, one of the best of all time. He's being caught very quickly by John Mulaney. If you haven't watched anything by John Mulaney, you need to stop and watch John Mulaney. He's people think he's clean because he looks like a 12-year-old boy, but he's cleaner than everybody else. But man, he is just. I watched the first time and just laughed, and the second time I watch it, I'm just like watching a magician who's good with his hands. I'm just like, oh my goodness, how is he doing this? He's just so good. Him, if you want just silly, Pete Holmes is probably one of the better just silly comedians out there. And then if you like words, like just brilliantly crafted words, Patton Oswalt's just top of the list.
Yeah.
That guy is the way he just puts sentences together is brilliant. There's a guy that doesn't do comedy anymore. His name's Tommy Johnigan. His albums are on iTunes, and he makes me laugh more than just about anybody.
Oh
For
yeah.
some reason, he strikes me. He's a comedy writer now for different late night shows,
Yeah.
but he doesn't do stand up anymore. But Tommy Johnigan is stinking funny. I like him a lot.
Yeah. Well, great. Hey, appreciate you coming on and sharing some
Oh man,
thoughts with
thanks.
us. Yeah, it was lots of fun. It didn't even uh, laughed a lot, so that was good. But again, people can find you on Twitter, and they can find your
Hmm.
comedy page on Facebook, and so there's some funny stuff there for them to check out.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I should post more, but I'll now I will since I'm on YouTube.
yeah. All
I'll do
right.
that.
Thanks a lot, Ben.
All right, thanks.